Welcome to the Liberty Lobbyist, where we teach you political lessons from the purple state of New Hampshire so you can advocate for liberty no matter where you live. I am Melissa Blasek. I am a former New Hampshire state representative and the current executive director and grassroots lobbyist for an organization called Rebuild NH. So, because it is back, we are the first show back in 2026, and that also means it is the start of the New Hampshire legislative season. Most states, if you are paying attention to your state, they are started now or they are getting started imminently. Some states are, some big blue states are in session kind of year round. Most red states or purple states, they have a limited season. Some of them are really limited, like 2-3 months. Some of them are only 2-3 months every other year. New Hampshire is about a 6-month season from January to June every single year. And that is because every bill that is introduced in the New Hampshire legislature must have a public hearing and must be voted on by the full body, which makes for a very open legislative process, but also more time. And but we're getting started with public hearings. We started last week with public hearings. We also, the New Hampshire House met last week to vote on the last remaining little group of bills that they had held over from the previous year. We had some, my organization had some really great wins out of that. We passed our functional ban on school-based health clinics. We passed a couple of education, like funding things to try to make the federal grant process more transparent. We passed a controversial bill, actually, but it was the only bipartisan bill that my organization supported. It opens up meat slaughtering so that even things like chickens and then cuts of meat and that sort of thing can be done in a custom processor and not through a USDA facility, as long as it is all like within New Hampshire. So I always love a bill that gives the feds a middle finger, and that is what this bill is doing. And hopefully it'll make access to local meat easier. Tomorrow, I am going to the Capitol for a public hearing on a bill that, as of right now, my organization is neither supporting nor opposing, but I have lots of thoughts on the bill. And I think it's a really important bill, and that's why I wanted to discuss it here. You're actually sort of my trial run for my testimony that I'll give in the House about this bill. It's regarding artificial intelligence. And I mean, my personal opinion and the opinion of my organization, as far as how we feel about AI, is that AI should be like any other technological advancement that has existed. It is a tool to be used by humans, but it absolutely cannot supplant humans or become its master. And that, of course, is some of the fear of AI. People have lots of fears. Those are mine. And my other fear is how it can be used by government to control people. I think part of maybe why some of our fears, as far as like vaccine passports and social credit score systems during COVID, didn't come true, is because we didn't have AI yet. And I'm not saying there's not going to be another exact scenario COVID again, but there are always crises that those in power like to use and utilize for power. And I do believe that AI, if abused, could facilitate that nicely. So I came across this bill. It's a Democrat-sponsored bill. And I got to tell you, folks, Democrats politically are signaling very strongly that they see a political opening for themselves when it comes to AI, with Trump and congressional Republicans just like bending over for pros as far as just giving them every cronyist deal that one could possibly get and not identifying that there could be any. And I'm not talking about creative destruction issues. I am talking about like real infringements on individual liberty type of issues. If we're not seeing that, they're not seeing that. And Democrats are seeing that. And they are seeing that this issue could be very good for them politically. So in my state, all the AI bills are Democrat sponsored bills, from what I can tell. This one is very good. However, it was written by a Democrat. All right. And that's my problem with it. It has some really good parts in it. And one thing I am going to tell the committee tomorrow is that if this bill is amended, it's possible, depending on how things shake out, this could be the most consequential bill to individual liberty of the year. I did write an amendment for them that I'm going to bring. Be helpful to your legislators. Okay. It only took me like 20 minutes because all I was doing was basically erasing a bunch of it, striking through tons of passages that I don't think should be there. And I'll go through which parts I did and didn't with you because it is interesting. But a legislator, most of these people do not have staff. They have 1,000 bills to deal with. They can't be spending 20 minutes writing amendments on 1,000 bills. You are more likely to get what you want if you have done the work for them. So I will bring this in. Everything has it the way I would want it. And if they agree, they'll just send it over to the drafting attorneys and to have it officially drafted. Okay. So um, the title of the bill is an act relative to the regulation of artificial intelligence technologies. This is HB 1725 in New Hampshire. Um, it does a few things that I think are silly and actually potentially bad. One of the things it does is to create an artificial intelligence council. Now, at its best, it's a waste of everyone's time. Okay. Because we don't need government like regulating by committee or overseeing by committee. And at its worst, I think it could potentially be used for cronyism down the line. And these are the things that Democrats don't see. I actually don't think that I probably understood and agreed with the intentions about why this council should be created. The problem is that I, as a conservative, identify that uh, government can't solve all problems. All government can really do is get out of the way to allow people to handle them themselves. Okay. Like these are big government solutions that are just not going to be helpful. Okay. So I struck out everything that had to do with this council idea. State regulations, I'm sorry, general duties and prohibitions. State agencies and any person subject to this bill shall, chapter. All right. Three things, A, B, and C. I have struck out A and B. I only think that C is worthwhile. A is provide clear and conspicuous disclosure to consumers when interacting with artificial intelligence system, including healthcare contexts, except in emergencies, in which case notice shall be provided as soon as practicable. No one needs another little footnote that humans are never going to read. Sorry. I'm not going to cry about it. If the bill includes that, I'm not going to cry about it. I'll be fine with it. I think it's a waste. Not develop or deploy artificial intelligence system with the intent to unlawfully discriminate against protected classes under state or federal law. I'm getting rid of that too, because I don't like to lean into the entire like protected classes nonsense. Somebody based off of their race, based off of their sexual preferences, based off of their gender, based off of their religion, whatever. They don't get special or different rights than the rest of us. We are all created equal. And that means that we are all created equal. We all have the same inalienable rights. They don't get special or different ones. And then C, this is where I think the money is in this bill. All right. I think it's the money. And also it covers everyone's rights. Listen, not develop or deploy an artificial intelligence system for the purpose of social scoring, manipulation aimed at causing self-harm or criminal acts, or infringing rights under the United States or New Hampshire constitutions. Yes, that is the money. Exactly. I need this to be law in all 50 states in America. The government should not be able to use AI in any way to violate the rights of the people. We need hard backstops about this. I'm sorry, it is scary what the potentials are down the line, and we need to draw a line in the sand right now. No government can use this in any way that infringes upon our liberty. Now we're in part two. I also think this is great language. Governmental entities shall not deploy artificial intelligence systems for the purpose of uniquely identifying individuals using biometric identifiers or collecting biometric data from publicly available sources without valid consent. Now, that part I think is great. Exactly. No, you can't. You're not going to be able to, government, use AI to start tracking us, surveillance state us to death. But because it's written, probably because it's written by a Democrat, then he continues, and I think this part needs to be taken out, but he continues, unless otherwise permitted for security, law enforcement, or fraud prevention. Wah, wah. Now we just invalidated everything else that we said. They'll just justify it in some way. Oh, well, law enforcement said. Law enforcement said. That's the whole point. We don't want law enforcement creating a nanny state. So my part of my amendment is to get rid of the unless caveat. And then that's it. There's a, enforcement, severability, that sort of thing. But I thought that was really interesting. I think that the good parts of this, like I said, should be law in all 50 states. Again, it is HB 1725 in New Hampshire, an act relative to the regulation of artificial intelligence technologies. Very, very necessary. And Republicans need to wake the hell up, because Democrats are going to run away with what will end up being more than likely a very popular winning issue with voters. So they smarten up, folks. Get off the cronyist gravy train with your big tech bro donors before it's too late. So that's what we have there. In light of the Supreme Court case going on right now, the Title IX Supreme Court case being heard, I am having on some local activists. This is their big, big issue. It's a husband and wife couple. We're going to have them on. And I got to tell you that this isn't my issue. Like, it's not something that I track a ton. They've actually taught me way more about this issue than I ever knew about before. Hopefully they're going to enlighten me even more about just all of the gender bending issues. And because they've been on this for way before anybody else was on this. And I actually don't know their backstory, how they got into it. I think it's going to be a great conversation. But before we do that, what do 3 billionaires, 4 major banks, and a legendary 72-year-old investor all have in common? They're all making the same shocking prediction. Gold is headed for $10,000 or more. Goldman Sachs says gold will surge 20%. JP Morgan says 25%. And one respected economist now believes the U.S. government could deliberately raise gold's official price to help pay off the national debt. The world's wealthiest players are already making their moves. Now you can see exactly what they're seeing for free. Our friends at American Alternative Assets just released a powerful new report, The Surprising Case for $10,000 Gold. It breaks down the hidden signals, the central bank gold buying spree, and how smart Americans are protecting their retirement with gold right now. Go to cloutgold.com to download it free, or call 855-803-GOLD. That's cloutgold.com or 855-803-GOLD. Welcome to the Liberty Lobbyists, Stephen and Beth Scaer. Thanks for joining me.
Hi. Nice to see you.
Yes. So we met a few years ago, and to be honest, I don't know anything about your background or how you got to be activists. So I was hoping we could start there. Tell us what led you to this activism.
Well, that could keep us going. That's a whole separate conversation. But we knew from the very beginning, the first time I heard the whole term transgender women, I knew it was going to be mandated that we were going to be called men, women, and I don't want to never wanted to live in that reality. In the meantime, our niece got drawn into this early on. And at that point, I didn't know that much about these treatments. and they were telling our niece, who was a very feminine girl, had a troubled upbringing, beautiful young woman, that her whole problem was she was a boy, and they put her on testosterone, and that didn't solve any of the real problems that needed to be addressed, and it culminated in her death of an overdose. By then, I was already speaking up in the state house. We both were against some of these laws that don't make any sense at all. And I've taken to the street to talk to a lot of people about this too.
That's what year was that?
2017, right?
Yeah, we've at least been speaking against this since 2016 and 2017.
So early in this. I mean, if you would have, I don't think I could have conceived of anything like this, 10 years ago. I wasn't thinking about it. I had not really heard about it. I didn't know anything about it. And then I really didn't start realizing that, wow, this is something dramatic and widespread until probably like 2021 is really when it like struck me how widespread it really was and what was really going on. And you guys have actually helped educate me quite a bit. I thought it would be good to have you guys on now because of the Title IX lawsuit, and right, at SCOTUS right now, and you probably know more about it than I do. Can you guys elaborate on what that case is and where it's headed?
Okay, now I'm feel a little put on the spot. Was it
Sorry.
was it Virginia or West Virginia?
West Virginia.
Yeah, a young man who's identifying as a girl, and he wanted to play on sports. And when the rules came from the state that he wasn't allowed to, he challenged that ruling. So what the Supreme Court just discussed is, does Title IX protect a boy who says that he's a girl, protect his right to play in girls' sports? And it was an interesting discussion that came out of that. I listened to some of the audio, and I think just a couple of justices ended up really asking, what exactly is a girl, or what is a boy? What is sex, before we go forward? And the people that were pushing back on this absolutely refused to give a definition of a girl or a boy. They even said it wasn't relevant to that. So even on the highest level, none of this makes sense. So people say, my son is my daughter. Let's put him on puberty blockers, chemically sterilize him, and allow him to compete in girls' sports. But no one can tell you, well, what's a daughter? What's a girl? It always comes down to, if you listen to the hearings in the State House, it's stereotypes. I mean, literally, a boy refuses to play with his toy trucks, doesn't pay enough attention to them. Or a couple of cases of, my son was always making dresses out of tea towels and sheets. Well, a boy shouldn't have to play with toy trucks to avoid being chemically castrated. What's going on is just horrible. And something that, in framing these conversations, even among the Republicans that have been fighting this boys and girls sports in our own state, even the Republicans will say, well, we really care about these transgender children. We just want to protect girls. They don't care about the transgender children if they're calling them transgender children, because these kids are getting chemically castrated and having their lives shortened. And I feel worse of them. Much worse for them than the poor girls.
And they're just fashion accessories for the people who are pushing this.
It is wild to me, the stereotypes. I remember watching Dylan Mulvaney's, Becoming a Woman thing, and everything that he thought was a woman were such absurd stereotypes about women. I mean, it's wildly offensive to watch and to listen to. And yeah, if you're not a girl if you don't like dolls, you're not a boy if you don't like trucks, you're not a girl if you don't want to wear a dress, if you don't act hysterical. I mean, it's just very. I always get very offended by it when I hear it. But you pointed out an interesting issue that even amongst Republicans, the sports issue has become the one part of this broader issue that they're willing to latch onto. And I actually also get annoyed when I hear them talk. Well, it's so common sense. It's so common sense. It's so common sense. The girls are getting hurt and they need private spaces and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that that's all true, but it is such an isolated aspect. I mean, not all girls play sports and have this as being an issue, right? But they are all being preached to that if there's something wrong with you, that maybe if you just wear different clothes or go on drugs, that somehow it'll all be solved for you.
It's
And
absolutely a panacea. It cures all of the problems. And we know, based on what research we have, that at least half of these girls, and it's mostly girls, by the way, the boys are a smaller group, but among them, at least half of them have autism. And the studies that we had coming out of the world's largest pediatric gender clinic, they found something wrong with every one of these girls. By that I mean, these are kids who suffered sexual trauma. Of course, they'd want to escape their bodies. And in addition to the autism, the depression, eating disorders. And in a sane world, people would say, look, you're treating for this gender identity, whatever that is. No one can tell you what a gender identity is. But this kid went through horrible trauma, or this kid's severely autistic. What they say, and this is the American Academy of Pediatrics, is all these problems, including the autism symptoms, are caused by an unaffirmed gender identity. So kids and their parents, but especially the kids, are told this is going to solve all of their problems. It's horrible.
And then they're left without the care that they need to solve their problems. And they just gets worse and worse.
When did this actually start? Because certainly when I was growing up, that wasn't used as a panacea for, I mean, there were probably different ones, but this was not the chosen panacea of the medical community. When did it become that?
Well, officially with the American Academy of Pediatrics, they adopted their policy in 2018, saying that people have these gender identities and they must be affirmed lest children die by their own hand. And it's a policy that was written by one doctor, and he apparently managed to bypass any sort of scrutiny for this policy. If you read the policy, it says that Jason Rafferty, that he wrote and edited the whole thing. But it was such a powerful lobby, and it got through in the American Academy of Pediatrics, didn't allow any debate among their own members, and only a few of them get to vote. This isn't any sort of a democratic institution among doctors. Before that, we really saw it spiking somewhere around 2015.
Yeah. Okay. That's when it really took off.
Right. And I've read that while there are some cases in medical literature going back in time of usually boys primarily wanting to be girls. First of all, it was much, much smaller. And yeah, it was primarily boys. But now this explosion is amongst girls, which...
Sure. What was about... If you look at the old DSMs for the psychological manuals, it was somewhere about 1 in 50,000 is extremely rare, almost always boys, and they acknowledged that boys would outgrow it. But then the whole philosophy came. This was a disorder that they had. And now it was with the new medical policy, what it says is it's not a disorder. It's this gender identity. It's a whole different thing, which is being unaffirmed. And it really boils down to saying that a girl's body can be possessed or occupied by this boy gender genie. And that's who she is, not her body. And you can't see it. She only knows through divine revelation, and it manifests itself through stereotypes. And if you don't, the kid takes the lead and calls for what the kid needs, which the kid's getting from the internet, right? From social media. And if you don't do it, the kid will die by his or her own hands fast. And that's what doctors are telling kids.
And what are the actual statistics about suicide amongst trans kids? Does gender affirming care reduce risk of suicide?
Well, first of all, the suicide statistics, I think Beth and I were both there at a state hearing where a doctor from Dartmouth Health said the suicide rate among transgender teens is as high as 40%, which is just ridiculous. It's less than 0.1%, and it's a bit higher than, well, it's really significantly higher than the baseline population of kids the same age, but it's still very, very rare. Mm-hmm. And the people that have studied it, especially they looked at during the CAS review, which was really looking at all the different people who had researched it, they found it to be the suicide rate to be exceedingly low. And that was shown by the data they looked at from the world's largest gender clinic. There's no evidence that any of these treatments alleviate the suicides rate is at least as high before as after. But the doctors continue, including from Dartmouth Health, to blackmail parents with, would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter?
And the suicide rate's comparable to kids with autism and the other serious comorbidities that these kids are suffering from.
Right. So now, other mental health issues, yeah.
Yeah, now those things don't get treated because instead of treating the problem, you gave people drugs, right? Mm-hmm. And if you give a girl testosterone, she's going to feel great.
Well, she's going to feel great, but she's also going to have a lot of aggression and, anger, hostility. And, that's not good for her mental health.
Right. Well, you're radically altering their natural state. None of that can probably be great for you. What is the difference between gender and sex?
No one can tell you what gender is. And I mean, I've gone out and I've had, at this point, probably thousands of conversations on the sidewalk about that. And it's been a long time since I've had a productive conversation. Just a couple of weeks ago, when I was talking to people in Colorado, someone came and spat in my face and got away. And what's more often is you get the F you, or you're disgusting, or you're wrong. But these people all run away as quickly as you can. But when they talk about gender, even when they do engage, what it boils down to, it's a stereotype. And usually those rare people that talk to me will end up agreeing, yes, gender is just a social construct. Well, yeah, it's a social construct. So if people don't dress the way you don't like, if a boy wants to wear pink, let him wear pink. If a girl hates dresses, so what? Leave them alone.
Mm-hmm. And they say it's protective. They say these kids need to transition because they're being severely bullied for being gender nonconforming. So we need to transition them to protect them from the bullies.
And these poor boys that we're talking about, we see them at the state hearings, and their moms come up with these stories. Inevitably, they would have killed themselves. There was one young man who identifies as a woman who the father said the story that he was going to cut off his genitals if they didn't affirm them. That's a ridiculous story, but no one wants to be the mean person at a state house hearing. Or much else. More people are speaking up right now, but they're saying unless you let my transgender daughter play boy sports, she is going to kill herself. And that's part of the blackmail that goes in the sports too. But the estrogen they're giving these boys, that's going to raise their chance of having a heart attack a stroke 26 times. It's really horrible what it's doing to their bodies. And we've got a lot of friends that are detransitioners too, including a beautiful young woman from our own church who's been speaking out. The doctors don't know what they're doing. They assure, there's long-term studies. Each of them talks about horrible bone problems and aches. I think it probably hits the girls harder. The boys have their entire sexuality destroyed. A lot of them can't even conceive of any sort of romantic attraction. And they don't even know what they're missing out on. These are the boys that, we're protecting. No, you're mutilating them, shutting their lives short and destroying their sexuality. And you think you're so wonderful for it.
The drugs are experimental, and that's correct, right? For this use, that they are experimental, correct?
I wouldn't even give them, I wouldn't even say experimental. I think I can't come up with a better term than quackery, and I've been at this a long time. If it were an experiment, you would be enrolling people in a clinical trial.
Yeah.
You would get baseline data of people's health. You'd be monitoring it and giving blood tests, and then you'd be able to say, well, what's the sexual function? As we add other drugs, what does this do to, as far as pains that they feel? What is it doing to their bones and their cognitive development? No one, including Dartmouth Health, no one is conducting the study. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because this shouldn't be happening, but in England, after the Cass review, they finally started the first clinical trial of using puberty blockers to shut down kids' puberties for sex change. Based on what we know, it's a cruel thing to do. But no one's done clinical trials on these drugs for this uses. What they'll say regarding the puberty blockers is people have been using them safely for years. Well, that's for precocious puberty, so it's only a few years and then they're off. There's been no studies of just shutting off someone's puberty completely and seeing what happens.
And they stop it. They stop it when it's time for puberty to start. So they have their puberty, and these kids, these trans-identified kids, aren't having their normal puberty. They skip right over it,
and we have no idea what that's going to do to them for the rest of their lives. It's so horrifying. And I guess at first I was thinking, what kind of monster of a parent does this to their child? But
it's a parent who's been threatened with suicide.
Yes. The more I've heard them talk about it, and some of these detransitioners talk about, what their parents were told.
There is a worldwide rush for gold right now and precious metals. China is buying gold. There are rumors that the Federal Reserve will be using gold to pay off federal debt, or the federal government will be using gold to pay off federal debt. Famous investors are buying gold. And there's a movement away from the dollar worldwide. And you can see that there are warning signs in the economy that appeared before the Great Depression in 2008 that are flashing red right now. So in all this instability, it is a very good idea to protect your savings, to protect your IRA by diversifying into precious metals, especially gold. There are a lot of gold companies out there. Not all of them are kosher. Not all of them are responsible businesses. American Alternative Assets really is. And we're very, very proud to have them as a sponsor. We're very picky about our sponsors, and we only accept sponsors who have products that we either use or invest in ourselves. So I really encourage you to go to cloutgold.com, cloutgold.com, and get a free report explaining to you what the risks are of not diversifying into gold and silver. And I just want to note that when Brian and I started talking about investing in gold 5 years ago, when it first became clear that you could do that easily, if we'd put in $1,000 then, it would be $5,000 now. If we'd put in $10,000 then, it would be $50,000 now, and so on. So obviously you can't predict everything about the future, but gold there's a limited amount of it on the planet. And in a time when you can have your assets switched off, if they're digital, like the truckers in Canada had their bank account switched off. People in Spain are having their bank account switched off. All of China is now on a social credit system. Your assets can be switched off. And Europe is pushing for central bank digital currency. Now is the time to diversify into gold.
Yeah, they're blackmailed. Well, you can either do this or your child's going to die. Mm-hmm. And it's such a moneymaker. I mean, to blackmail a child to make money is truly unbelievable. And now you're creating patients for life because they will have health issues for the rest of their lives. And
it's kind of funny what you say about the money making, because Dartmouth Health has repeatedly denied that this is about making money, and maybe the New Hampshire Medical Society. But they've also come back and say, unless we're allowed to give these hormone treatments to these children, endocrinologists will not work in New Hampshire.
They'll leave
So if
the
they're
state.
not making money, how does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
As far as the parents are concerned, yeah, I've got friends whose parents were blackmailed, and that's so much guilt for their parents, talking to their parents too, to have been involved in this. It's horrible to live with and hear those stories. But there's other groups too. And for example, one of the moms who's pretty prominent in testifying told the story of, we got the usual, he said he was a girl. Well, you don't know what a girl is, so he certainly didn't. And he liked girls' clothes, whatever the hell those are, and girls' toys. But the mother said, so I thought he might have this condition. So I went to the library and I got all these books about trans children, and I read them. What the heck is that? I mean, this woman wanted
the
to play
kid.
a
She read them to the kid.
Mhm.
And then her story is the next morning, he comes down the stairs and he says, Mom, I think I'm, and by her own account, he couldn't finish it. So she finished the sentence for him. Boom, we're off shopping, getting a whole new wardrobe for the new gender identity. So there's definitely moms who they're called Transhausen moms. And for those of us that fight them, they're definitely there.
Mm-hmm. Walk us through New Hampshire. You guys are advocates here in New Hampshire. New Hampshire legislation over the last few years. What has passed? What has been vetoed? That sort of thing. Where are we?
Well, right now we have SB 268 for to protect women's spaces in sports, which is on the governor. Well, it's coming to the governor's desk, which is retained from 2025.
Okay.
And she had vetoed a previous bill, HB 148, which was almost identical, except 268 defines what sex is. Actually, it gives a definition. So that's the only difference. And I don't know if that's going to make a difference to Governor Ayotte, that little bit of extra.
Just signed that letter supporting the lawsuit. Did you see that today?
No.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, so she signed a letter
yes.
to 26 other governors supporting the challenge at SCOTUS right now. And then, but I remember reading it this morning and thinking, but haven't you already vetoed these bills? You had your moment, lady.
To be fair, if that case goes in our favor, our HB 1205 from last year will become unchallengeable, I believe. And the one boy that's left in New Hampshire, Parker Terrell, I believe will no longer be able to play soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if all she cares about is sports, then I think we're
handing it to her on a silver platter. So hopefully, she signs that. What other bills about trans treatment and surgeries have?
For last year, the New Hampshire passed a law, and Kelly Ayotte signed it into law. We've banned what they call top surgery, gender denying mastectomies for girls, for minors. So that's really good, as well as puberty blockers and hormones. The one compromise I would prefer they hadn't made is that they didn't have a start date until January. They could have cut it off sooner. And the kids that were already on these treatments were getting grandfathered in. So that's a lot further than I thought we were going to go. And we owe a lot of that to our friends at the LGB coalition too. That really came. Yeah, they showed up again and again for these hearings. Yes. And Jamie Reed, who worked at one of these clinics, the whistleblower, had some powerful testimony too. So that was a great relief. However, Lynn Liberty of Dartmouth Health, an endocrinologist who I think heads their programs for minors, said she's just going to keep sending kids over the state lines. How hard is it to drive down to Massachusetts and get your kid cut up?
We live in a modern world. That is a reality. However, And while that's still awful, and so yeah, and it may not actually stop any, it still is. You should still have that line in the sand of like the state of New Hampshire will not, accept this as being okay. There are bills about puberty blockers this year. Is that correct?
I didn't see anything new about medicalization of children.
Well, do we have someone about the statute of limitations for people that have
Yes, there's one.
That's a big one for me.
Statute of limitations for detransitioners, so they can sue. Because right now they have a very short window that they can sue, and of course, it takes a while for them to grow up and realize what has happened to them. So that's a really important one.
That is very important. I mean, I've been saying legislation is great, but at the end of the day, it would take lawsuits, right, to really shut it down. If they can't make money doing it, that's the only way that this probably really, really gets solved. So,
and that's HB 1356.
Okay,
and that's really important. We have a young friend in another state who had a mastectomy when she was 14 and was put on testosterone when she was 13. Things that people repeatedly tell me doesn't happen, never happened. But when it does, it's wonderful.
Oh,
and this poor kid, I think she just turned 21, that it went past the statute of limitations. Now, these kids are involved. Transgenderism is absolutely a cult that teaches that a girl's body is inhabited by these magical boy gender genies. And they're getting bombarded with this cult and this community, and it takes a while to grow out of it. And a lot of these side effects, people don't know what they are. So you're not going to suffer some of these things for 5, 10 years down the road. For example, if a girl takes testosterone, in the short run, it's going to make her feel great. In the long run, she's going to have horrible cramps as her uterus atrophies, and she's going to need to have surgery because of that.
Have a hysterectomy.
But that's years down the road. These things happen way down after the statute of limitations. We have a friend who has a lawsuit in New Hampshire, had these treatments as an adult, and she has horrible problems with her bones, and your teeth are bones. So she recently had to have her teeth extracted. They didn't warn her about any of these things, but they hide behind the statute of limitations. And then when these doctors come in, they don't know what they're talking about. And they come in their white coats, or the administrators with their suits, and they talk great. They don't know what they're talking about. And they just make stuff up about this being absolutely safe. And I'm not going to say all the lawmakers, but a lot of the lawmakers, well, this is a medical professional. We trust our doctors. So it's awful what they're doing. And that's why, because people want to put their faith in their doctors, they don't want to hold them accountable. And what really needs to happen, and Jamie Reed, the whistleblower who worked in one of these clinics, says is, the last thing we want to do is criminal penalties against these doctors. I want to see them in jail. I spoke at a school board meeting, and something I said, that school board members said something that I was along the lines of I was being insulting for them. Insulting? I want to see them prosecuted. I want to see them behind bars.
But one other answer to your question about the bills, there's also SB 520 sponsored by Senator Reardon, where she wants to repeal the ban on double mastectomies for kids, which is really, shocking that she would do that.
Mm-hmm. The double mastectomies for minors that never happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ones that never happen.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. They always say that. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And then, but we can't be told we can't do that because we are, So you are Sidewalk Steve. Tell us a bit about what you do there.
Well, sure. I got into being Sidewalk Steve. I had some billboards putting up just promoting Abigail Shrier's book, Irreversible Damage, the Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. And one of the billboards in Derry was taken down, and I happened to have a sign because I was going out to some other events. So I started there and talking to people, and I got more signs made. And when I work full time, so I get out when I can on weekends, or Beth makes sure I go to all of the festivals, and I just go out and I just try to talk to people. I really want to have civil conversations about this. What is a transgender child? And I get a lot of support, and sometimes Beth, as often as not, goes out with me too, and you meet a lot of people who have been hurt by this too. And the people that support this stuff are brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because this nonsense can only exist through coercion. And sometimes people they'll tell me, I want to go out with you, but I don't want to be seen, or people talk to you. Don't put, I don't want to be seen on camera because they're afraid they'll lose their jobs or their reputations will go down. People are really afraid. And I think it's people know who these people pushing the demographic of these people are. They are the enlightened, wealthy white women and the Antifa types, and you can usually spot them. And they will not engage. They won't talk about these things. But the main thing I've been trying to do is try to just normalize talking about it. That if someone comes up and does disagree with me, I'll let them have the last word. I'm not trying to win a debate. I don't shout with them. And it's kind of funny. Someone recently wrote an article about rage baiting and gave the rage bait industry and gave me as an example and said, Sidewalk Steve doesn't get in people's faces or shout or aggravate people. And it's like, that's his trick. Well, no, I actually want to have civil conversations about an important issue. And when I started, there wasn't X, it was Twitter. I got booted off that, and I got booted off Facebook, of course, and you couldn't talk about these things. So it was the sidewalk. And the American Medical Society and the American Academy of Pediatrics, they refuse to talk about it. And if you listen to the audio from the court cases, no, we're not going to talk about what a girl is or what a boy is or what sex is. On no level these conversations take place.
Yep. No. It's all very interesting. I don't know how we got here as a society. But here we are, and I really appreciate all that you both do here in New Hampshire, and we'll keep plugging away at it. But you tell me whether you agree or not. To me, it feels like the pendulum is pulling back. Would you agree?
First of all, I don't believe when people give pendulum analogies. I'm not fans of them because there's something that's passive about that I don't have to do anything, the pendulum will swing. I know what people mean, but it doesn't always swing back. Like, when's the pendulum swinging back in North Korea?
No,
it doesn't. And most places are horrible, and most places will get worse. It's a constant fight, and it's not when we talk about pendulums, and it's like we're talking about historic forces too, which is kind of a Marxist argument. Things will change if people get out and fight.
Mm-hmm.
And in some places, it's the nature of cognitive dissonance. If someone who believes in something strongly is shown clear evidence that it's not true, what does he do? He doubles and triples down on it. And we're seeing that happening in our neighboring states, in Maine and Vermont and Massachusetts. And those places are fighting more than ever to mutilate kids and get boys and girls sports. It's a constant fight. And I don't think I'm going to see the end of transgenderism in my lifetime. It's too much money, and it's a panacea. For all these autistic kids who are taking advantage of it, it's just a great grift.
Oh, we will let it sit there. Both of you tell people how they can find you if they want to follow you.
Sure. The easiest place to track what I'm doing is if you go to sidewalk_Steve on X. That's where I post most of the things. And I've been trying to keep resources up to date on my sidewalksteve.org website if people want to look there. But I'm mostly on X.
And he posts my content on his Sidewalk Steve account, so that you can follow me there too.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and if someone wants to go there, what would really be, I'm not a young man. I don't know how much longer I'm doing this, and I have some fear of being the doddering fool that I'm often accused of being. So it would really make me feel good if some other people wanted to come out. So if anyone from any town, I'll make a long drive, I don't care if it's Coas or whatever, wants to stand with me, I'll make a trip to do there. If they just send me a DM me through my X account, I'd love to talk to people. I'd love to stand with people.
That's fantastic. Well, folks, go stand with Sidewalk Steve and get out there and start standing with the fight. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that is it for the Liberty Lobbyists. You can follow me on X at Melissa Blasek NH or at Rebuild NH. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always email me, director@rebuildnh.com. Until next time.